Betrayal at the reunion. My brother unveiled a secret that shattered us all. Last August, we braced ourselves for the annual family reunion at Aunt Cathy's, a gathering destined for drama. Everyone from Dad's side was trekking in, some from as far as New York, others scattered across Florida. Wrangling this crew together felt like herding wildcats, especially since our family history was more tangled than a plate of spaghetti. Surprisingly, everyone showed up, even my cousin Aiden, who'd been radio silent for 6 years. But the real shocker, my brother, Derek. Derek wasn't just a recluse, he was practically allergic to family functions. So, when he rang me a month beforehand, claiming he'd make it, I knew something monumental was brewing. Derek and I have always shared an unbreakable bond. Mom was our anchor, holding us steady through Dad's fresh start and countless hardships. When she passed 5 years ago, it felt like our entire world had crumbled. Before her death, she'd hinted at a potential inheritance for us, but we never uncovered anything substantial. It sent Derek into a frenzy, obsessively combing through documents, convinced Mom had squirreled away a fortune. I urged him to let it go, but the quest consumed him, creating a rift between us that ended in silence. Then, bam! Derek walks into Aunt Cathy's looking like he just clinched a deal on Wall Street. "Hey guys," he announced, waving like he was gracing a stage. "Derek, my God," Aunt Cathy exclaimed, a little too enthusiastic. "You look like you just stepped out of a bank." Derek gave her a knowing glance and shot back, thought it was a special occasion. Aunt Cathy. Figured I should look the part. My eyes narrowed. This was a performance. Derek never dressed up, not even for weddings. Meanwhile, my dad's grand reappearance after a decade apart was nothing but a show, all talk and no substance. Derek, however, wasn't buying it. He fixed Dad with a stare as if marking his prey. Once everyone was settled, Derek took center stage, his voice commanding attention. "I've got something important to say," he declared, silencing the room. Even Grandma Rose, sharp as a tack at 92, leaned forward. "What's this all about, Derek?" Her voice was as crisp as winter. Derek raised a hand. "Just give me a minute, Grandma. I've been doing some digging about Mom, specifically about her inheritance." A few knowing glances were exchanged. Dad stared down at his hands, his face unreadable. "Derek," Aunt Cathy began cautiously, her tone gentle. "He ignored her. Mom left us money, a lot of it. She didn't trust anyone with it, and after years of searching, I think I know why." The room held its breath, suspended between confusion and morbid fascination. "Turns out, Mom was betrayed by someone in this room," Derek continued, his voice hardening. Every word hung heavy. "What are you talking about, Derek?" I demanded, my heart pounding against my ribs. Derek turned to me, his gaze intense. "Mom told me a little before she died. She knew her money wasn't safe, and now I know why." I swallowed hard, struggling to process his words. Then, Derek locked eyes with Dad. "She didn't trust you, Dad, and now I know why." Dad, who had been maintaining a stoic facade, visibly flinched. "Derek," he said, his voice low and defensive, "let's not do this here." "No," Derek shot back, his voice rising. "You walked out on us, Dad, left Mom to raise us with nothing, and then you have the nerve to take her money when you left." A collective gasp rippled through the room, loudest from me. Grandma Rose sat up straight, looking utterly stricken. "Sam, what on earth is he talking about?" Dad opened his mouth, but no words came out. His face was a mask of shame. "He's talking about Mom's inheritance from Grandpa Henry," Derek seethed. "Mom's dad left her money. Not enough to live the high life, but enough to get by. Instead of letting her have it, Dad swiped it when he left." Dad finally looked away, running a hand through his thinning hair. "It's not that simple," he mumbled, barely audible. "Explain it to us, then," I demanded, my voice shaking. After a long, agonizing pause, Dad took a deep breath. I was in trouble. Financially. I thought I could borrow the money, get back on my feet." Aunt Cathy looked horrified. "Sam, you took that money and left Diane to fend for herself. I thought she'd manage," Dad stammered. "She always did. She was stronger than anyone." Derek let out a bitter laugh. "She was strong because you left her no choice." Dad had no answer. He simply stared down at his hands, searching for a way out. Then, Derek pulled out a weathered, old notebook. She had stacks of these, filled with her thoughts and feelings. I left them alone after she passed, feeling like it would be too painful to dive into her private thoughts, but clearly Derek had no such reservations. "How did you get that?" I asked, feeling a surge of anger and protectiveness. "Because I needed to know the truth," he said simply, flipping open to a specific page. "Here, Mom wrote it all down. Everything she wanted, but she couldn't trust anyone with it." Grandma Rose shook her head. "Diane told me nothing of this." "Maybe because she couldn't trust anyone after what Dad did," Derek snarled. "Would you blame her?" He turned back to Dad, his expression venomous. "She knew you'd already stolen from her once. She couldn't take that risk again." I didn't know she felt that way," Dad stammered. "Oh, you didn't?" Derek's voice dripped with disdain. "Maybe you would have known if you'd bothered to stay. But no, you thought it was best to leave us all behind. And now you want to make amends. Aunt Cathy, her voice trembling, tried to defuse the situation. Derek, this isn't the place. You all want the truth, don't you? Derek interrupted. Here it is. Mom left behind more than just her words. I found the account she was hiding. The room fell silent again, this time a heavy, shocked silence. What do you mean you found the account? I whispered, barely able to get the words out. Derek glanced around, taking in our reactions. Mom left clues in her journals. She wanted us to have that money. She left it for us, and it's still there. Dad's mouth dropped open, his eyes widening. How much? He finally managed to ask. Derek's lips curled into a smug smile. About $200,000. Enough to make up for the life she couldn't have because of you. The weight of his words sunk in. Diane was sitting on that kind of money and she never touched it. Derek replied she didn't trust herself to use it after what happened with Dad. She wanted it there for us, making sure we knew where to look. This wasn't just about the money, it was about Mom's hope that we would be okay. I wanted to scream at Dad. I thought she'd be okay. Diane was always the strong one, always the one who could handle anything. Derek's face hardened and with conviction in his tone he stated you thought she could handle it because you left her no choice. My cousin Taylor, who had been quiet throughout the entire story, shifted around uncomfortably. What are you planning to do with it, Derek? She asked while staring intensely into his eyes. Are you just going to keep it, or rub it in Dad's face? Derek took a deep breath, composing himself before answering. He stated firmly, no, I'm not just going to keep it. I thought a lot about what Mom would have wanted, and I think she'd want us to do something meaningful with it, something that would make a difference. What does that even mean? I asked, genuinely confused. Derek took a deep breath. The took pause, setting himself before speaking to ensure that he would deliver his message to the family effectively. He delivered this message in a clear and concise tone stating I want to start a foundation, in Mom's name, something that would help single mothers like her who don't have anyone else to rely on. We could use the money to set up scholarships, financial assistance. We can make a real difference. The room fell silent, everyone processing what he'd just said. Grandma Rose dabbed her eyes with a handkerchief, her voice breaking as she spoke. Diane would have been so proud of you, Derek. She always said you had a good heart, even if you tried to hide it. I looked at Derek. I think Mom would have loved that. Dad, who had been staring at the floor, finally looked up, his eyes filled with tears. If you do this, if you really set up something in her name, I'd like to help. I know I don't deserve to, but I'd like to contribute, however I can. Derek gave him a hard look, his jaw tight. So you can feel better about yourself, so I can finally do something right, for Diane and for you too. I could see the internal struggle raging in Derek's eyes, the war between his anger and the hope that maybe, finally, there was a chance for redemption. Fine, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But that doesn't mean we're all good now. This doesn't erase everything. I understand, Dad replied softly. I just want to help, however you'll let me. Aunt Cathy, who had been holding her breath the whole time, finally let it out. You know, this might be the first time I've seen this family actually work together on something. Maybe this is the start of something new. For the first time, I felt a strange sense of peace. Maybe this wasn't the perfect ending, but it was something. We were all finally confronting our past, and maybe we could start healing. In the following months, Derek and I worked tirelessly to set up the Diane Lewis Foundation. We met with lawyers, accountants, and community leaders, determined to make something meaningful out of Mom's legacy. Aunt Cathy jumped in, helping with fundraising and networking. We became a team in a way I'd never imagined possible. Dad contributed financially, donating a significant sum to get us started. I could see he was trying to make amends, but it would take time before I could fully forgive him. Still, he was there, showing up at meetings and events, doing what he could to support us without overstepping. The foundation's launch event was held a year later in Savannah. The room was filled with people, single mothers we'd been able to help, families who had benefited from our programs, and friends who had supported us from the beginning. Derek and I took turns speaking about Mom, sharing stories from our childhood, and reflecting on the strength and resilience that had defined her life. I spoke about the late nights she spent sewing clothes for us or helping us with homework, even when she was exhausted from a long day at work. Derek spoke about her fierce determination to never let anyone take advantage of us. Then, near the end of the event, Dad stepped up to the podium, his voice thick with emotion. I don't know what the future holds for us, for my kids, but I hope they find a way to be happy. They're my light, my reason for everything. No matter what happens, I want them to know that they are loved beyond measure, and someday I hope they find a way to love each other, even if I'm not there to see it. Tears streamed down my face. I reached over and squeezed Derek's hand. For the first time in years, I felt like we were truly honoring her memory. After the speeches, Dad approached us cautiously, his face lined with worrying and uncertainty. He looked at us, his eyes filled with tears, and said, I'm so proud of you both. Diane would have been so proud. We didn't hug, but I could see in his eyes that he was genuinely remorseful, and for the first time, there was a glimmer of hope. Not forgiveness, not yet, but a step in the right direction. As the night wound down, Derek and I found ourselves alone, standing outside the community center watching the last of the guests trickle out. "I think we did good tonight," Derek said, a soft smile playing on his lips. I nodded, feeling a warmth in my chest that I hadn't felt in years. I think Mom would have been proud. We stood there in silence for a moment, both of us lost in our thoughts. "Thank you, Lydia," he said quietly, "for believing in me, even when I was so caught up in my anger." I reached over and squeezed his hand. "We did this together, Derek. And Mom was with us every step of the way. We weren't perfect, and we still had a long way to go, but we were finally on the right path." The next day, Derek and I went to visit Mom's grave, bringing a bouquet of wildflowers to place on her headstone. We sat there for a while, telling her about the foundation, about the people we were helping, about Dad's involvement. I felt a sense of her presence, as if she were watching over us, guiding us even now. When we finally stood up to leave, Derek turned to me, his face filled with a quiet determination. "We're going to keep doing this, Lydia, for her, for everything she gave us." I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. Yes, for her. We had finally found a way to honor her memory. It wasn't the fairy tale ending we dreamed of, but it was real, it was meaningful, and it was ours. Derek and I have made incredible strides with the foundation, but something still felt unfinished. As much as we were building a new legacy in Mom's name, it was like a scar that hadn't fully healed. We kept Dad at arm's length, accepting his help but refusing to truly let him in. I just didn't know if Derek or I was truly ready. The next time Dad reached out, he surprised me by suggesting we meet up, just the three of us. My immediate reaction was dread, but I thought, maybe this was what we needed to finally close the chapter and let ourselves heal. I spoke with Derek about it, and he eventually agreed. We decided to meet on neutral ground, a quiet little park by the river in Savannah. It was a chilly afternoon, and the sky was a muted gray, casting a somber tone over everything. Derek and I arrived together, and Dad was already there, looking out over the water. He looked older than I remembered, weighed down by years of regret and remorse. When he saw us, he stood up awkwardly, giving a small nod. "Thanks for coming," he said. Derek crossed his arms, keeping his distance. "So what's this about?" Dad glanced down, taking a deep breath before he began. "I've been thinking a lot, about Diane, about you two, about everything. And I realized that I never really told you the whole truth." Derek rolled his eyes. "After all this time, we deserve that. I know. But please, just hear me out." I placed a hand on Derek's arm, urging him to listen. Reluctantly, Derek nodded. Dad looked down at his hands. "When I left, it wasn't just because I was selfish. I was in debt, yes, but it was worse than you knew. I made some bad decisions, got mixed up with the wrong people. By the time I realized how deep I was, it was too late. Diane knew about the debts and she tried to help, but I was too far gone. I took that money because I thought I could use it to pay off the worst of it, but I was wrong. I was scared, and instead of saving you, I left you with nothing. I let Diane bear the burden alone." Derek shook his head, his face a mix of anger and pain. "So what, we're supposed to feel sorry for you now?" "No, Derek, I don't expect forgiveness. I just want you to understand that leaving was the worst mistake of my life. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was just running away from my own failures. I abandoned my family, and there's no excuse for that." The silence hung heavily between us. Part of me wanted to scream at him, to tell him how much his leaving had hurt us, how it had left a hole in our lives that nothing could fill. But I could see that he already knew that. Derek's face softened, just a fraction. "You have no idea what it was like for us, do you? Barely making ends meet, wondering if you'd ever come back." Dad's eyes filled with tears. "I know, son. And I'll regret that every day of my life. If I thought I could change it, I would give anything, but that is simply impossible. I cannot change my past. But there's nothing I can do to change the past. All I can do is try to make things right now, however you'll let me." I took a deep breath, stepping closer to Dad. "Why didn't you ever reach out?" He looked at me. "Because I was a coward. I was ashamed. And by the time I realized how badly I'd hurt you, I didn't think you'd want anything to do with me." Derek shook his head, looking away. "It's too late for sorry. You don't get to come back and play hero now. I understand, but I'm not here to be a hero. I want to support the foundation. I want to help do something meaningful in Diane's name. She deserves so much more than I gave her." Derek clenched his fist, struggling with his emotions. He responded with a shaky tone, which emphasized both the anger and pain that he has carried for over a decade. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Dad," he said quietly. "Not yet. Maybe someday. That's more than I deserve. But I'll be here, whenever you're ready." We had finally confronted the truth, the pain, and the regret, and maybe, just maybe, we could start to move forward. As we stood there in silence, the tension slowly being replaced by a tentative hope for the future. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't fix everything overnight, but it was a start. A few weeks later, Derek and I held another event for the Diane Lewis Foundation. We invited single mothers, community leaders, and other families we'd helped. Dad showed up quietly, offering his support without overstepping. For the first time, it felt like we were all working together towards a common goal, honoring Mom's memory and making a difference in the lives of others. After the event, Derek and I went back to our old neighborhood. We sat on the same park bench we used to sit on as kids, sharing memories and reminiscing about Mom. "I think we're finally honoring her," Derek said quietly, his voice filled with a sense of peace. Looking up at the sky, I felt like maybe Mom was watching over us. "Yeah, I think we are." And in that moment, I knew that no matter what happened, we were going to be okay. Derek and I sat on that bench until the sky faded from a dusky pink to the deep blue of night, both of us lost in our thoughts and memories. Her memory was so tight that it felt like she was trying to shield us from everything wrong in the world. We let ourselves feel her absence, but also her presence, like she was still there. After that night, Derek and I grew closer than ever. We poured ourselves into the Diane Lewis Foundation, determined to build a lasting legacy in Mom's name. The foundation wasn't just about money or programs. It was about providing single mothers with the support, resources, and encouragement they needed to thrive. Just like Mom had, we wanted to give them what Mom never had: a safety net, a support system, and a reminder that they weren't alone. As the foundation grew, so did our relationship with Dad. It wasn't an easy journey, and there were moments when the past threatened to pull us back. But every time it got hard, we remembered Mom, and we remembered what we were fighting for. One afternoon, about a year after that initial reunion, Dad asked if we could all sit down together. He seemed nervous, fidgeting with his hands as we met in a small cafe overlooking Boston Harbor. "I know you've both been more than patient with me," he said, his voice shaking. "And I know I have no right to ask this, but I need to tell you both the full story about why." Derek and I exchanged a glance, each of us unsure of what to expect. "When I married your mother, I had no idea how lucky I was. Diane was the best thing that ever happened to me. She always believed in me and I wanted to be the man she deserved." He paused, struggling to continue. "I wasn't. I made mistakes. I let people into my life who didn't have my best interests at heart, and I got tangled up in things I couldn't control." He took a long breath, his eyes glistening with envious tears. "When I realized how deep I was in debt, I panicked. I thought if I took that money, I could pay off the worst of it, protect you and your mom from the people that made the deals with. I told myself I'd pay it back, that it would be quick, but I was lying to myself. I made the worst decision of my life, and when I finally left, it was because I didn't think I could ever make it right. By the time I understood the full cost of what I'd done, it was too late. I was too ashamed to come back to face you, or your mother, but I thought of you both every day. I just didn't have the courage to try to fix things until now." Derek's face softened, his expression almost sad. Finally, he spoke, his voice low and raw. "You don't know what it was like for us. You weren't there. Mom gave everything she had, every last ounce of herself, to make sure we were okay. She was stronger than any of us. And you." Dad nodded, his face contorted with pain. "I know, Derek. And that's something I regret until the day I die. If there's any way I can make it up to you, to honor Diane's memory, please tell me. I'll do whatever it takes." I reached over, taking Derek's hand, feeling the storm of emotions we'd both been carrying for so long. "I think the foundation it's a way to honor her. And you being here, you just continuing to show up, Dad, that's enough." Derek was quiet for a moment, his gaze fixed on Dad. "We can't go back and change what happened," he said finally, his voice hoarse with emotion. "But maybe we can build something good from it. Something that Mom would be proud of, a family. Together." From that day forward, our relationship with Dad transformed. It wasn't an easy journey, and there were moments when the past threatened to pull us back under. But every time it got hard, we remembered Mom, and we remembered what we were fighting for. A few years later, we held the 10th anniversary gala for the Diane Lewis Foundation. It was our biggest event yet, held in a beautiful venue overlooking Savannah's historic district, the city lights shimmering in the river below. Nearly everyone from our family was there, along with donors, community leaders, and mothers we'd helped along the way. Derek and I were mingling, greeting guests, when Aunt Cathy pulled us aside with a nervous smile. "There's someone here who wants to meet you two," she said, her voice filled with emotion. She led us to a woman named Carla, who had recently gone through the foundation's program. Carla was in her late 20s, and she held her young son's hand tightly as she introduced herself. "I just wanted to say thank you," Carla said, her voice trembling. "I don't know where I'd be without the help you've given me. My son and we have a home now. I've started school again. I feel like I finally have a chance to give him the life he deserves." She paused, her voice choked with emotion. "You and your son, you're the reason we keep going," I replied, my heart filled with gratitude. Your mother would be so proud of you both. Her words hit me like a bolt of lightning, and Derek and I both struggled to keep our composure. After she left, we stood there for a moment, feeling a profound sense of peace and fulfillment. This is it, isn't it? I whispered. This is what Mom wanted. To know that we made a difference. Derek nodded, his eyes shining with tears. I think we're finally giving her the legacy she deserved. As the night wound down, we stood on the balcony overlooking the city, the sounds of laughter and music fading into the background. Dad joined us, standing a few steps away, his eyes filled with pride. I don't think I've ever been prouder of you both, he said, his voice barely a whisper. Derek looked at him, a faint smile tugging at his lips. Thanks, Dad. We couldn't have done it without you. The three of us stood in silence, each of us lost in our own thoughts. I felt a quiet sense of closure wash over me. And in that moment, I knew that Mom was with us, smiling down on us, proud of the family we had become. Looking back on everything that transpired, I can't help but wonder if I and my brother handled the situation with our father and our mother's inheritance in the best way possible given the circumstances, considering all the pain, betrayal, and complex emotions involved, and if there were things we could have done differently to reach a resolution sooner or to minimize the hurt caused to everyone involved. And I'm genuinely interested in hearing your perspective and insights on how you think we navigated this challenging family crisis, and would love to hear any advice or suggestions you might have for fostering healing and reconciliation within families facing similar situations, because your feedback would be invaluable in helping me better understand the dynamics at play and in making more informed decisions moving forward.